In this project, we're going to use layers again and make some selections. We'll work with layer styles. We'll do a color fill layer and some adjustment layers. And we're going to take two images, one of this cactus, and our base image is going to be this desert shot by Case Rodriguez. And we're going to combine those two with some layer magic to create this image. So I'm calling this Just Add Water. The feature here is going to be adding some the lake with the reflection from the mountains. We'll change the sky a little bit, change the tone, and then we're going to bring in that cactus and try to make it match the scene as best as we can. Go ahead and download those two images, open them in Photoshop, and let's get started. The first thing we're going to do with our base layer is create a copy of our background image. And I can right click on it and choose duplicate layer, or I can also grab that layer and drag it down a little plus sign for a new layer on the bottom of the layers palette, and that'll create a duplicate. Either way works just fine. So we're going to select this foreground of our image of the desert just until it drops down in what I'm going to call our lake bed. I'm going to go to my tools menu and I'm going to select the quick selection tool. Now remember, with the quick selection tool we get a brush in essence, and I can change the size of that brush using the bracket keys on the keyboard. Right bracket makes it bigger, left bracket makes it smaller. I'm going to start on the bottom left. I'm just going to paint over, and I'm actually going to come up and try to get more of that. Now notice that I'm getting into the area that I don't want, and that's okay, because now what we're going to do is on the options menu select the subtract from selection option, and we're going to start to paint this in a little bit. Now you can make your brush smaller, and you could come in and select some areas here that you don't want. Now remember, the beauty of this is if you make a mistake, you can always undo and go back into your history. Now it's still pretty much a rough sketch in. So I just kind of keep working it until I'm getting the areas that I want or don't want. Again, I can use my shift key and go back and make it and add the selection. So if I make a mistake, I can easily bring that back in. Now I'm going to show you a great little trick in terms of working with selections, and that is the quick mask mode. We've seen mask. The quick mask mode is the way, though, for you to see what is selected and what's not by shading it in a color. Red is the default. And to get there, all you do is press the letter Q on your keyboard. And so the area that is not in red is our selected area. Now remember, if you paint in black on a mask, it hides. If you paint in white, it shows. So we're going to take a paint brush, and again I can change the size of my brush using the bracket keys. And if I'm painting with black, I can come in here and just get rid of the areas that I don't want. It's a little fine tuning here with the brush in quick mask mode. Now I'm not worried about getting things perfect, because I'm going to show you how we can sell this very easily, just adding some more brush strokes. But I'm going to try to keep this, maybe the stick here that comes up as much as I can. And then if I need to, I'll take my brush really small and just kind of come in here alongside that stick. Sometimes it's helpful to zoom in. So I can zoom in, and now I can be a little more precise with my hand-eye coordination. Come along here and just simply select what I don't want. So I'm just brushing in with a black brush. Now if I want to get something like this that's been not selected, I can use the X key on the keyboard to switch between black and white for my foreground color, or between actually the background and the foreground color, which happens to be black and white. So now I'm painting with white, And I can come in here and I'm going to say, you know, I just want that area there. And let's make our brush a little bit smaller. And let's come into here. All right, now I'm going to go back to black, bring my brush up, and continue to paint in. I'm going to pause the video here and continue to do this. You can continue working on your own, because you don't need to watch me do this for the next 10 minutes. So go ahead and work on your own image, and then come back. Well, welcome back. There's my selection at this point. Now, if you take a really small brush, just kind of help sell this effect. I'm going to paint with some black here. And if you come to an area where there's a bunch of heavy brush, you can just make a couple very small strokes down in. That just gives it a little bit of a rough edge that will help sell this effect. Now, like I said, you don't have to be perfect here, because when we do the water, just the contrast of the foreground and the water will sell this effect if you can just see a little bit through some of this brush. Now, if you press the letter Q, you will see your marching ants again. I want to save this by going to the select menu and just say Save Selection. I'm going to call this foreground. Just in case I need to do something with it later, I always bring that selection back. I also want to select the background that's going to be at the water's edge. And so here I'm going to take the rectangular marquee tool and make sure that I'm adding to my selection. So I'm going to draw a rectangular marquee just where I want the edge of the water to be. So I'm getting the top, the left, and the right, and just coming down. I think probably about right there is a good spot. And then on my background copy layer, still there, I'm going to come down and choose to make a mask. And that's going to be this Add Layer Mask button at the bottom of my layers palette. If I turn the background layer off, you'll see what happened there. We now have an area that is transparent. Remember, on our mask, what's black is hidden and what's white is shown. And so the unselected portion is what was masked out. I'm going to go down to my layers palette at the bottom and add an adjustment layer. I'm going to choose solid color. And I'll choose a very light blue. Almost kind of a grayish blue. You can click OK. And now I have a solid color that's overfilling my entire image. I'm going to take that layer, though, I'm going to drag it down to below my background copy. And there we have the beginning of our water. Let's take that background copy layer and duplicate it. And just so you can see this, I'm going to turn the other layers off. I'm going to take my rectangular marquee tool. I'm just going to select that foreground area. I'm going to click on the mask thumbnail and say Edit, Fill. You can do foreground color if it's black, or you can just come down and choose black. Remember, black hides in our mask. We're going to get rid of that. Then I'm going to do a sky replacement. I'm going to Control D to deselect, Command D on the Mac, Edit, Sky Replacement. And I'm going to choose a cloud image. I kind of like for this image just the wispy thin clouds. Scale that up just a little bit. And I'm going to bring the brightness down slightly. It's kind of a dark image. I'll say OK. So now I have the sky area as a separate layer. I'm going to take that layer. I'm just going to bring the opacity down. That seems to fit in well with the image as far as the tone. Let's name that layer Sky. And I'm going to take the sky layer and I'm going to duplicate it. Go to the Edit menu, Transform, Flip Vertical. Now it's upside down. going to take the Move tool and just get it in place at the water's edge, maybe slightly above that. Let's go to Edit, Transform, Scale. I want to scale this non-proportionally. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down, grab that top handle, and just drag down. And I'll move this back in place. And I'll grab that bottom handle and bring it up a little bit too. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to press the Enter key and nudge it up a little bit so it's overlapping the background. And then I'm going to take that sky copy layer, let's name that Reflection. And I'll grab the thumbnail and drag the reflection layer between the background copy and the color fill layers. Let's turn those layers back on. And then finally I'm going to take that reflection layer and let's change the opacity there even more. I'm going to bring it down to about 25%. I'm going to select the color fill layer. And for my foreground, I'm going to click on one of the blue areas of the sky reflection for my foreground. Say OK. And for the background, I'm going to come back and click on that foreground color. And this time I'm going to make this a little bit darker. They're fairly similar shades, but one's just a little bit darker than the other. I'm going to go to the Filter menu and choose Render Clouds. What that does is it will take those two colors, kind of blend them together like a cloud type texture. Now I have two options here. Since this is an adjustment layer, I can convert it to a smart object or I can rasterize it. If I rasterize it, that will turn it into a bitmapped normal layer. I'm going to choose Convert to Smart Object because then I can always come back and change the settings that I do here. You can see how the clouds basically gave a little effect of ripple in the water. Next, I want to bring in that saguaro cactus image into the foreground to help frame the composition. I'm going to go to the sky layer at the very top, make that my active layer. I'm going to find my cactus image and drag it down so it's in its own window and I can see my image behind it. But over in the layers palette, since this is now the active document, I see the background layer for the cactus. And all I'm going to do is grab that from the layers palette and drag it onto my document. Now it comes in way over here on the side. I'm going to drag it over. It's really big. I can hide that window. And here I'm going to scale this. So Edit, Transform, Scale. And because it's so big, I'm just going to first of all just go up to the top and scale it down to about 50% using the Options menu rather than trying to find the handles. And I'll just press the Enter key to accept that. But then I'm going to drag it into place, maybe where I want it. It's still pretty big. One that's great in doing compositions like this is to take that layer and make it semi-transparent so I can really see how this is going to fit into the image. Kind of like it there. I'll bring that opacity back up. I'm going to take the Magic Wand tool, and on the options bar I'm going to uncheck Contiguous. I'm going to set the tolerance down to about 10. The lower the tolerance, the less range of pixels there are from the shade that I click on. Since I really have a solid white here, I could actually probably set that lower than 10. But I want to get the white pixels, and there's some in between the arms here, and there's some down here, so I unchecked Contiguous. I'm just going to click over here in the white area. And you can see I didn't quite get the area down here. That's a slightly different shade of white. So let's try this again. I'll do 20 this time, and I'll click again in the white area, making sure I have the new selection clicked. And now it gets all the white pixels, including the stuff that's between the arms here. It's probably going to pick up a little bit of these white flowers in the cactus. That's okay. We'll come back and fix that. I'm going to go select inverse. I really want to select the cactus and not the white. I'm going to go to the select menu, choose modify. I'm going to contract by 1 pixel just to get rid of any artifacts that might be a little white just at the edge. And then I'll create a layer mask. Since we did a non-contiguous selection, there's an area up here where I see that I'm looking through the cactus to the sky. A little bit down here as well, I'm seeing some of the water through there. Those are some white flowers. So on my layer mask thumbnail, make sure that's selected. I'm going to take the paintbrush and paint with white. Remember, white reveals. I'm going to come in and just paint that area back in. There's the white flower. And up here, get that white flower. I think there's a little bit here. And that's pretty much it. So that looks pretty good. Now the only problem I'm seeing is that my cactus is way too bright for this image. It's a dead giveaway that this was a composite. So I'm going to create a adjustment layer, brightness and contrast. I'm going to bring the brightness down and the contrast down. Now you'll notice that when I'm doing this, it's causing the entire image to be darker and have less contrast because it's being applied to everything below the adjustment layer. Well, we can fix that. I'm going to go to my cactus layer, hold down the Alt key. I'm going to drag that thumbnail up to the brightness and contrast mask thumbnail, and then ask, do you want to replace the layer mask? I'm going to say yes. And so now it's going to mask out, it's going to use the same mask as my cactus, but I still have an area over on the right that is not masked out. Oh, we'll fix that with the rectangular marquee. I can just select that, edit, make sure I'm on the layer mask, edit, fill, and black. And I'll deselect my marching ants. And now I can still come back up and change. If I click on the left-hand side of that brightness contrast adjustment layer, I can come back up and change my brightness and contrast just for the cactus and try to get it to blend in well with that image. So it looks a little more natural. If you'd like to see more videos in the Photoshop Practicum playlist, click the title at the bottom. If you'd like to be alerted to new videos, please click my photo in the top right to subscribe to the channel.